I think that most creative endeavors, if they are truly brand new, I expect to fail the first time. I don't expect to succeed the very first time out the gate.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Quickfire Marketing. I'm your host, ET. We have a very, very special guest, Robyn, on the line. Robyn, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, ET. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here. My name is Robyn Showers. I have been in marketing for almost 15 years now, which is crazy to me. I've been in SaaS in particular for about a decade, and I just have a lot of thoughts about marketing. Most of my experience has been in content marketing. Most recently, I was at Vimeo, and I am just fascinated by the market, what it's doing right now, how marketers are responding to it. I think there's a lot of panic out there. And so I've been having a lot of fun the last couple of months just talking to lots of smart people like you, ET, about what's going on and how we should all be reacting.
You have a ton of experience working with agencies. I feel like a lot of marketing companies moving forward are just going to leverage consultants. When you're talking to non-marketing people, sometimes the conversation can get a little weird. We've had examples in the past where we've been like, hey, there's been an increase in click-through rate to a developer-minded CEO, and their eyes just kind of glaze over. But when we have the conversations, that means an extra 3 opportunities a month, and their average deal size $50K. They're like, oh, snap. So what are your thoughts navigating through all of that?
One of the things I really love about analytics is that good analytics is just telling a story, right? Figuring out how to make things make sense to the audience that you're talking to. In that particular scenario, I've spent the most time in between the agency that we're working with to deliver amazing results and the executive that I am explaining this to so that we can make sure we can keep getting budget. And you're right, a lot of marketing speak doesn't make sense to somebody building the product or responsible for the sales team. Their brain is focused on a bigger business problem. So you have to translate it into what they're thinking about every day. One of the real pitfalls, though, is focusing more on things that we can measure easily and not necessarily on things that create the most impact. A lot of my work is creating long-term programs, and a lot of those take time to show ROI, right? What we're measuring are the early indicators of success. Draw the picture before you start talking about something that's more granular. Selling via marketing or via sales on features, it's a race to the bottom. There's always going to be someone who releases another feature, but if you can sell on this is what we're actually giving you back, you're going to be the person with the secret weapon.
How about uncovering that? If other companies are saying that too, what are unique ways that you've done in the past to kind of get a leg up on the competition?
It can be really tricky. The hard truth with SaaS marketing is that often there is really not a clear differentiator. We are getting more and more to the point where a lot of software is very similar. But I do think it comes down to things like customer service. Customer service and reliability is incredibly important, and it just takes one time to really ruin trust. Sometimes those end up being the differentiator. Sometimes the community ends up being the differentiator. Sometimes what's actually compelling about one company over another is who uses it. Who do you want to be surrounded by when you're surrounded by the users of this particular product? Who do you want to learn from? Who do you want to be like? As far as how to get to it, it's just talking to your customers, right? It's talking to as many people as you possibly can and asking the more emotionally resonant questions, because that's usually what drives us to make that final choice.
On that note, if you have an awesome weekend or just an awesome break, do you ever use any of those elements to kind of seep into your content work and create content?
Oh, definitely.
And
I absolutely think you need time away from the problems. Definitely in creative work, I think creatives need a lot of time off the job to sort of play and think and get back to a place where their battery is all filled up and they can create again.
creative juices are flowing, and we're talking about creativity. Have you attempted something creative that didn't work out well? Sometime later, it seemed like, maybe it can come back. Kind of like how Jinko jeans are coming back, where you're just like, it didn't work in 2010, but maybe now.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, I think that most creative endeavors, if they are truly brand new, I don't expect to succeed the very first time out the gate. Like you fail in order to get to the place where you succeed. That's a pretty crucial part of the creative process. I've joined a lot of companies where we've come up with a campaign idea and somebody will say something along the lines of, well, we tried that 5 years ago and it didn't work. almost every time you should still try that campaign idea. 5 years ago, there was a different team involved. It was a different market. You had different customers involved. There were so many variables that were different that it actually has very little bearing on whether or not that idea will work today. Marketing succeeds and fails in the execution, and it is really easy to fail at execution. That means that you haven't properly tested whatever the idea is.
More of a question given the times. We're in a moment in the SaaS space and technology space where it's kind of a roller coaster ride for go-to-market teams. You could be doing all the right things and maybe your team ceases to exist in like a week regardless. What are your thoughts on that? And what are some things you're seeing for the future?
There's nothing you can do to protect yourself from that. So I think the first thing is like, are you okay enough with risk to be in this right now? Anytime the market gets chaotic like this, it's a scary time to be in tech, but there are also a lot of opportunities. There are new platforms arising. None of us have a perfect AI playbook. It doesn't exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's still being written. What should we actually do with it on the product side, but also how should we be using it to be better at our jobs? What are the frameworks that we can still pull forward from what we've learned in our careers, and how do they apply to this new world? My prediction for the future is that that's what the next 5 to 7 years is going to be. The new era of internet is still being formed around us. The go-to-market teams that get ahead are the ones who are able to take in that information and turn that into strategy rather than relying on repeatable playbooks or looking around and seeing what competitors do and copying them. Don't get too hung up on trying to control the market factors around you. We're in for a wild ride the next couple of years.
Yeah.
That's just the fact.
And with technology changing, I've seen some companies do a hard line where they're kind of like isolating themselves, trying to keep everything in place with the old playbooks. And on the flip side, we're seeing people change constantly, a little too much. What are some things they can keep in mind to find a steady course?
It's worth mentioning that the old playbooks aren't totally dead. There are plenty of companies who are, for instance, running the volume SEO play and seeing traction. They are growing traffic and it's working. Maybe it's not working as well as it did 5 years ago, but it's still working. I think focusing on user psychology, how people compare plans to each other, what they look for in products, all of the frameworks that have been built around those things are still true and can be pulled forward into this new world. A lot of the basics of creativity and copywriting and why certain formats work or why humor works versus other forms of entertainment versus education. I think all of those things are still true. The trick is surround yourself with tools that help you keep track of that, new software tools that help us get to know our audiences better. Try everything, but don't get sucked in by shiny object syndrome. Those things are changing quickly and I think should be reevaluated every 6 months to a year. But on the other hand, some of my first marketing roles, there was a new social media platform every couple of months, and most of them didn't make it. We had to argue as a marketing team about which ones to actually invest resources behind because there is an advantage to being the very first people on the
Mm-hmm.
platform. But there's also a disadvantage by stretching a very small team way too far. Just because everybody is talking about one particular platform or podcasts, but you're actually seeing a lot of traction with your blog, it doesn't necessarily mean you should follow the crowd. You have to figure out what your audience likes to consume.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. At the end of the day, listen to your customers and don't get distracted by too many shiny objects.
100%. Figure out your story and stick to it. Learn how to tell it in different mediums on different platforms to different people. That's always been one of the hardest aspects of marketing. It's something that doesn't change, but it's something that's just hard to figure out. What exactly is our story and how are we different?
Well, cool. It was great having you on. We had a really awesome conversation. Thank you so much. Goodbye to the fans. Guys, you can find Robyn. We'll have her LinkedIn on and also find us where all podcasts are found. Robyn, any final words?
Thanks for having me on. This was really fun.
The next thing would be like if those like VR goggles take off, like the Vision Pro and all that, and you could finally just work and draw and type and stuff without
Yeah,
needing
how do
hands.
you
Yeah.
feel about that? I know it's the very first generation of that software, but the first people were like, oh, yeah, it sounds great until you realize that all day long you're like moving your head around and that that's actually really weird.
I haven't played with them yet, but I do remember the Google Glass. I put those on for 5 minutes. A buddy had them and they were interesting, but I don't remember using it well because there just wasn't enough stuff to interact with it. But I do remember the content that was created from it. right? There's millions of videos. Everyone's doing all these examples. I just don't have, yeah, there weren't enough things for me to interact with it.